The first gunshot Zara Blackburn heard upon arriving in Silvercreek was meant for her. The bullet splintered the wooden post just inches from her face as she stepped off the stagecoach, sending her heart racing and dust flying into the dry Arizona air. It was 1875, and the West was still wild, unforgiving, and no place for a 22-year-old woman with nothing but a small carpet bag and shattered dreams. "Welcome to Silvercreek, miss," the stagecoach driver said with a grimace as he handed down her bag. "Reckon that was just the Higgins boys letting off steam. Town ain't usually this enthusiastic." Zara clutched her bag to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. The journey from Boston had been long and grueling, but she hadn't expected to be greeted by gunfire. Her emerald eyes surveyed the main street, a collection of weathered buildings, horses tied to hitching posts, and men whose faces seemed permanently etched with hardship. She had come west with a promise of employment as a schoolteacher, only to receive a telegram in Denver informing her the position had been filled. With her funds dwindling and options limited, she had continued to Silvercreek on the advice of a kind woman she'd met on the journey. "The $Silver Saloon always needs pretty girls," the woman had told her. "Not for, well, just to serve drinks and maybe sing a bit. The owner, Edmund Blake, pays fair." Now, standing in the dusty street with gunshots still ringing in her ears, Zara wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The $Silver Saloon stood at the far end of the main street, its weathered facade adorned with a faded sign that had once been painted silver. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke, whiskey fumes, and the stench of unwashed bodies. Piano music tinkled from a corner where a bald man with nicotine-stained fingers pounded away at yellowed keys. Edmund Blake was a heavy-set man with a greasy mustache and eyes that had forgotten how to be kind. He looked Zara up and down like she was livestock at auction. "You can sing?" he asked, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "Yes, sir," Zara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was trained in Boston." Blake laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "This ain't Boston, sweetheart. These men don't care about your fancy training. They just want something pretty to look at while they drink away their troubles." He offered her a position room and board above the saloon, and a small wage. In return, she would serve drinks and sing every night. The contract he pushed across the bar was scrawled in barely legible handwriting, but the terms were clear. She would belong to the $Silver for 1 year. Any attempt to leave would result in forfeiture of all wages and potential legal action for breach of contract. With trembling fingers and a heavier heart, Zara signed. What choice did she have? That night, dressed in a gown that revealed more than it concealed, Zara stood before a crowd of rowdy miners, cowboys, and drifters. Her voice, trained for opera and hymns, now sang bawdy saloon songs that made her cheeks burn with shame. The men whistled and hollered, raising their glasses in drunken approval. Days turned into weeks, and Zara found herself trapped in a nightmare. Blake's true intentions became clear. He had no interest in her singing talent. He wanted to parade her in front of his customers, using her beauty to sell more drinks. The contract she had signed gave him complete control over her, and he reminded her of this fact daily. "You'll wear this tonight," he would say, tossing her increasingly revealing costumes. "And smile more. These men pay good money to see a happy girl." The only respite came in the form of Millie, an older waitress who had been at the $Silver for years. She took Zara under her wing, teaching her how to navigate the groping hands and lewd comments without causing offense that might result in Blake's wrath. "You just gotta survive, honey," Millie told her one night as they sat in Zara's tiny room. "That's all any of us are doing out here, just surviving." But survival seemed an increasingly distant hope as Blake's demands grew more outrageous, and the customers more emboldened by his obvious disregard for her dignity. It was on a particularly rowdy Saturday night, nearly 2 months after her arrival in Silvercreek, that everything changed. The saloon was packed with miners flush with their monthly pay, and Blake had forced Zara to perform 3 sets already. Her voice was growing hoarse, her feet aching in the tight shoes he insisted she wear. "One more song, songbird," Blake hissed in her ear, his meaty hand gripping her arm painfully. "Make it good. The Carter gang just rode in, and they're spending big." Zara nodded tiredly, ascending the small platform that served as a stage. She began a melancholy ballad about lost love, a song that always quieted even the rowdiest crowds with its haunting melody. That's when she noticed him. He sat alone at a corner table, untouched whiskey before him. Unlike the other men, whose eyes roamed her body with undisguised hunger, he watched her face, listening to the words of her song. Tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky, he seemed out of place among the raucous crowd. When she finished her song, the usual whistles and cheers erupted, but the stranger merely nodded slightly, a gesture of appreciation that somehow meant more than all the drunken applause combined. As she stepped down from the stage, Blake intercepted her. "Go serve the gentleman in the corner," he ordered, "and make sure he orders more than 1 drink." Approaching the stranger's table, Zara felt an unfamiliar nervousness. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, not from age, as he couldn't have been more than 30, but from squinting against the sun. A cowboy then, or perhaps a rancher. "Can I get you another drink, sir?" she asked, gesturing to his untouched whiskey. "This one's fine, thank you," he replied, his voice deep and unexpectedly gentle. "That was a beautiful song." "Thank you." The simple compliment, delivered without leer or ulterior motive, caught her off guard. "You don't belong here." It wasn't a question but a statement of fact. Before she could respond, Blake appeared at her side, his face flushed with anger. "She bothering you, mister?" "Zara, get back to the bar. Other customers need serving." The stranger's eyes narrowed slightly. "She's not bothering me. In fact, I was hoping to hear another song." Blake's demeanor changed instantly, a false smile spreading across his face. Of course. Zara here is our star attraction. She'll be performing again in an hour. In the meantime, can I interest you in a game of cards? Or perhaps something stronger than whiskey?" The stranger shook his head. "Just the music." Blake's smile faltered, but he nodded before dragging Zara away. "That's Mason Buchanan," he hissed when they were out of earshot. "Owns the Double-B Ranch outside town. Rich as sin and twice as dangerous when crossed. You keep him happy. You hear me?" For the next hour, Zara moved mechanically through the saloon, serving drinks and dodging wandering hands. But her thoughts kept returning to the quiet cowboy in the corner, who watched the room with careful attention yet seemed separate from its debauchery. When she took the stage again, she chose a different song, not one of Blake's approved bawdy numbers, but a gentle folk song her mother had taught her. As the last note faded, the room was silent for a moment before erupting into applause. And though she shouldn't have, Zara found her eyes seeking out Mason Buchanan. He was watching her, a slight smile softening his weathered features. The next night he returned, and the next, always sitting in the same corner, ordering a single whiskey that he barely touched, listening to her sing. He never approached her, never made demands or unwelcome advances. He simply watched and listened. After a week of this, Blake grew suspicious. "What's Buchanan's game?" he demanded, cornering Zara in the storage room. "He comes in every night, buys 1 drink, and leaves. What's he saying to you?" "Nothing," Zara replied truthfully. "He just listens to the music." Blake's eyes narrowed. No man comes to a saloon just for music, especially not a man like Buchanan. "You're holding out on me, girl." That night, Blake instructed one of his bouncers to stand near Zara at all times, effectively preventing any private conversation with customers, particularly Mason Buchanan. But the cowboy was not so easily deterred. As Zara was finishing her final song of the evening, a note appeared on the small table beside her stage, delivered by Millie with a conspiratorial wink. When she was finally alone in her room, Zara unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. "Miss Blackburn," it read in a neat, strong hand, "I believe you are being held here against your will. If you wish to leave, I can help. Meet me behind the general store tomorrow at noon if you can get away. MB." Zara read the note 3 times, her heart pounding. How had he known? And more importantly, could she trust him? She had learned the hard way that kindness from men often came with hidden costs. But what choice did she have? Blake was becoming increasingly controlling, and some of the girls had whispered that he had plans to expand the Silver Dollar's offerings to include more than just drinks and music. The next day, Zara managed to convince Blake she needed to purchase personal items at the general store. He reluctantly agreed, but sent one of his men to accompany her. "You got 15 minutes?" the man growled as they reached the store. "I'll be waiting right here." Inside, Zara moved quickly, selecting a few necessities before slipping out the back door, while the shopkeeper distracted her guard with questions about a shipment. Mason Buchanan was waiting, mounted on a magnificent chestnut stallion. Without a word, he extended his hand. Zara hesitated only briefly before taking it, allowing him to pull her up behind him on the horse. They rode in silence, leaving Silvercreek behind, the horse's powerful strides eating up the distance. Zara clung to Mason's back, her heart racing with fear and an emotion she couldn't quite name. Was it hope? After an hour's hard ride, they arrived at a small cabin nestled against a backdrop of pine trees. It was simple but well maintained, with smoke curling from the chimney and a small garden to one side. "This is my line shack," Mason explained as he helped her down from the horse. "One of several on my property. You'll be safe here while we figure out what to do about Blake." "Why are you helping me?" Zara asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since she'd read his note. Mason's blue eyes held hers steadily. "Because no one should be forced to live as you have been. I've seen what Blake does to the women who work for him. My sister." He paused, his jaw tightening. "My sister worked for him once. She didn't survive the experience." The simple, tragic explanation silenced any further questions Zara might have had. Inside, the cabin was spare but comfortable, with a small stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a bed in the corner. Seeing her glance at the single bed, Mason quickly added, "I'll be staying at the main house. This place is yours for as long as you need it." For the first time in months, Zara felt safe. The relief was so overwhelming that tears sprang to her eyes. Mason, looking alarmed, awkwardly patted her shoulder. "It's going to be all right," he said. "Blake has no legal claim on you, regardless of what paper he made you sign." "He'll come looking for me?" Zara said, wiping her eyes. "He doesn't like losing what he considers his property." "Let him come," Mason replied, a hard edge entering his voice. "The Double B has been dealing with rustlers and outlaws since before I was born. Blake doesn't scare me." True to his word, Mason left her alone in the cabin, returning only the next morning with supplies and a change of clothes. "These belong to my sister," he explained, handing her a simple but well-made dress. "They might be a bit large, but they're better than that." He gestured vaguely at the revealing saloon outfit she still wore. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Mason would arrive in the morning with fresh supplies and news from town. They would share a simple breakfast, during which he would tell her about his ranch and the surrounding country. Then he would leave to attend to his business, returning in the evening to ensure she had everything she needed before riding back to his main house. Zara found herself looking forward to these visits more than she cared to admit. Mason was unlike any man she had met before, straightforward, honest, and respectful of her boundaries. He never pressed for details about her past, accepting the fragments she chose to share without demanding more. "I came west to be a schoolteacher," she told him one evening as they sat on the cabin's small porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "My parents died last year, and there was nothing left for me in Boston." Mason nodded, understanding in his eyes. The West can be a harsh place for those without connections, but it can also offer a fresh start. A week passed with no sign of Blake or his men. Zara began to relax, spending her days exploring the immediate surroundings of the cabin and teaching herself to cook using the simple ingredients Mason provided. She even began to sing again, softly at first, then with growing confidence as she rediscovered the joy music had once brought her. It was during one of these impromptu performances, as she sang while hanging laundry on a line strung between two pines, that she realized Mason had returned early and was watching her from his horse. "Don't stop on my account," he said when she fell silent, embarrassed at being caught. "I've missed hearing you sing. These songs are different from what Blake made me perform," she replied, returning to her task to hide the blush spreading across her cheeks. "They suit you better." Mason dismounted, tying his horse to a post. "I've been thinking, Miss Blackburn—" "Zara, please," she interrupted. After all they'd been through, formality seemed unnecessary. A small smile tugged at his lips. "Zara, then, I've been thinking about your situation. Blake has been telling people you stole from him before running off, trying to turn the town against you." Zara's heart sank. "I should have expected that." "It's actually good news," Mason continued. "It means he's not admitting you were essentially his prisoner. That would raise too many questions about his treatment of the other girls. But if people believe I'm a thief, they won't for long. The sheriff is an old friend of my father's. Once I explained the situation, he was quite interested in looking more closely at Blake's operation. It seems you're not the first woman to vanish from the Silver Dollar under questionable circumstances." Hope flickered in Zara's chest. "Does that mean I could be free?" "Truly free," Mason nodded. "The contract you signed isn't worth the paper it's written on. No court would enforce it. But—" he hesitated, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "There's still the matter of your reputation. A single woman who's worked in a saloon, even just as a singer, will find few respectable doors open to her," Zara finished quietly. She had known this, of course. It was why she had been so desperate to escape Blake before he could force her into activities that would damn her reputation beyond redemption. "Unless," Mason said carefully, "she were to have the protection of a husband." Zara's eyes widened. Surely he wasn't suggesting. "I know this is sudden," he continued, words tumbling out now as if he'd been rehearsing them, "and I wouldn't expect. That is, it would be a marriage of convenience, at least at first. You would have your own room at the main house, of course. The Double B is doing well, you would want for nothing. And perhaps, in time—" He trailed off, a flush creeping up his neck. Zara stared at him, struggling to process this unexpected proposal. "You barely know me," she said finally. "I know enough," Mason replied simply. "I know you're brave and resilient. I know you have a voice that could make angels weep. And I know that when you smile, really smile, not the false one you wore at the saloon, it lights up everything around you." His words touched something deep within her, a place she had thought long frozen by disappointment and fear. But caution held her back. "Why would you do this for me? The truth, please." Mason was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes serious as they held hers. "Because in the week you've been here, this cabin has felt more like a home than my house ever has. Because I find myself making excuses to come check on you. Because—" He took a deep breath. Because I think I could very easily fall in love with you, Zara Blackburn, if you gave me half a chance. The honesty in his voice was unmistakable. Zara felt tears pricking at her eyes, but for once, they weren't born of sorrow. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to answer now, Mason assured her. Take some time to think about it. It's a big decision. But Zara found she didn't need time. The answer was already forming in her heart, surprising in its certainty. Yes, she said simply. Mason blinked, clearly caught off guard by her quick response. Yes, I will marry you. A smile spread across her face, genuine and bright. Not just for protection or respectability, though I'm grateful for both, but because I think I could very easily fall in love with you too, Mason Buchanan. The joy that transformed his face in that moment was something Zara knew she would remember for the rest of her life. Their wedding was a small affair, held at the ranch with only a few of Mason's trusted hands as witnesses. The sheriff of Silvercreek performed the ceremony, his presence serving as both blessing and warning, a reminder to Edmund Blake that Zara was now under the protection of not just the powerful Buchanan family, but the law itself. Life at the Double B was a revelation for Zara. The main house was spacious and comfortable, run with quiet efficiency by Mrs. Carlson, the housekeeper who had served the Buchanan family for decades. True to his word, Mason gave Zara her own room, though it adjoined his with a connecting door that remained closed by mutual, unspoken agreement. They were taking things slowly, learning each other's habits and histories, building a foundation of friendship that both hoped would blossom into something deeper. Mason introduced Zara to ranch life, teaching her to ride properly and showing her the vast expanse of land that comprised the Double B. In return, Zara brought music back into the house that had been silent since his sister's death, her voice filling the rooms with warmth and life. The townspeople of Silvercreek, initially wary of the former Saloon singer, gradually accepted her as Mason's wife. It helped that the sheriff's investigation into the silver dollar had revealed Blake's numerous illegal activities, confirming Zara's account of her time there. When Blake was finally arrested for assault and extortion, many of his former employees came forward with similar stories of abuse and coercion. You were lucky, Millie told Zara when they met in town one day, the older woman now working as a cook at the hotel. Most girls who end up at the Silver Dollar don't get fairy tale endings with handsome ranchers. It's not a fairy tale, Zara had replied, though she understood what Millie meant. We're still figuring things out. And they were. Despite living under the same roof, sharing meals and conversations, there remained a careful distance between them. Mason never pressed for more than Zara was ready to give, his patience and respect only increasing her growing affection for him. It was on a warm evening in late summer, nearly 3 months after their wedding, that everything changed. Zara had been playing the piano in the parlor, singing softly, when she felt Mason's presence behind her. She finished the song, letting the final notes linger in the air. That was beautiful, he said, his voice low and warm. What's it called? Heart's Surrender, Zara replied, turning on the bench to face him. My mother used to sing it. Mason nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. It suits you, does it? Zara asked, suddenly aware of how close he was standing, of the intensity in his gaze. Yes, he said simply. Then, after a moment's hesitation, Zara, I need to ask you something. Her heart quickened. What is it? Are you happy here? With me? The question took her by surprise. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? Mason ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. Because sometimes I wonder if you accepted my proposal simply because you had no other options. And if that's the case, I want you to know that you're not trapped here. I would never hold you to. Zara stood up, closing the distance between them and placing her finger against his lips to silence him. "I'm here because I want to be," she said firmly. "Not because I had no choice, but because I chose you." The hope that blazed in his eyes made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Mason lowered his head and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. Zara answered by winding her arms around his neck, drawing him closer. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Mason rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Zara Buchanan," he whispered. "I think I have since the first moment I heard you sing." "And I love you," she replied, the words feeling right and true as they left her lips. "My rescuer, my husband, my heart." That night, the connecting door between their rooms remained open. As summer gave way to fall, and fall to winter, Zara and Mason's relationship deepened and strengthened. The Doubleby prospered under their joint care, with Zara bringing new ideas and perspectives that complemented Mason's traditional ranching knowledge. Together, they weathered the harsh winter storms, cattle rustlers, and the occasional remnant of Blake's former associates seeking revenge. When spring arrived, bringing with it new calves and wildflowers across the range, it also brought news that filled the Buchanan household with joy. Zara was expecting their first child. "A daughter," Mason predicted as they sat on the porch swing one evening, his hand resting protectively over Zara's growing belly. "With your voice and spirit." "Or a son," Zara countered with a smile. "With your strength and kindness. Either way, this child will know only love and freedom," Mason promised. "Never the kind of fear you knew." Zara squeezed his hand, grateful beyond words for the life they had built together. From the darkest moments of her captivity at the Silver Dollar had come the greatest happiness she had ever known. As the sun set over the Doubleby, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Zara began to sing softly, not a saloon song or an opera aria, but a simple lullaby for the child growing beneath her heart. Mason's arm tightened around her shoulders, holding her close as her voice carried across the land they both loved, free and unfettered as the wind itself. The girl who had been forced to sing for strangers had found her true audience at last. A man who loved her not for her voice alone, but for the strength and courage that had brought her through darkness into light. And as stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Zara Buchanan thanked whatever fate or providence had led her to Silvercreek, to the Silver Dollar, and ultimately to the arms of the cowboy who had broken her contract and taken her home.